Case 1. The London Hammer. Deep beneath the red sandstone cliffs of London, Texas, something impossible was waiting to be discovered. In 1936, Max Hahn and his wife Emma were walking along Red Creek when they spotted a curious piece of wood protruding from a limestone nodule. What they found inside that rock would challenge everything we thought we knew about human history and the timeline of technological development. The object was an iron hammer with a wooden handle, perfectly preserved inside stone that geologists dated to the Ordovician period, roughly 400 million years ago. This was long before dinosaurs walked the earth, long before the first trees grew, and impossibly long before humans evolved. Yet here was a tool that appeared unmistakably modern, trapped in ancient rock like a message from an impossible past. The hammer's metallurgy defied explanation. Analysis revealed iron purity levels of 96.6%, with traces of chlorine and sulfur but no carbon content typical of modern steel production. This unusual composition created metal that resisted rust and corrosion in ways that seemed to surpass contemporary manufacturing techniques. The wooden handle had partially petrified, further supporting the claim of extreme antiquity. Mainstream geology offers alternative explanations for this anomaly. Rapid mineral deposition can occur under specific conditions, potentially encasing relatively recent objects in stone-like concretions within decades, rather than millions of years. Underground water flows rich in dissolved minerals, could theoretically create the limestone nodule around a 19th century mining tool, explaining both the preservation and the apparent age of the surrounding rock. But questions remain. The hammer's unusual metallurgy doesn't match known 19th century ironworking techniques. The lack of carbon in the metal suggests production methods that weren't widely used until the 20th century. Yet the object was reportedly discovered in undisturbed geological formations. The wooden handle shows signs of mineralization consistent with long-term burial, creating a timeline puzzle that neither explanation fully resolves. Case 2. The Wolfsegg Iron. In 1885, Austrian foundry workers were breaking up coal delivered from a mine near Wolfsegg when they discovered something that shouldn't have existed. Embedded within the coal was a small, precisely machined iron object measuring roughly 2.5 inches on each side. What made this discovery extraordinary wasn't just the object itself, but the coal it came from, which had formed during the Tertiary period, approximately 60 million years ago. The object appeared to be artificially manufactured, with smooth surfaces and sharp edges that suggested mechanical precision rather than natural formation. Local authorities examined it, and the object was eventually displayed in the Heimathaus Museum in Vöcklabruck, where it attracted attention from researchers and anomaly hunters for decades. The Wolfsegg iron, also known as the Salzburg cube, challenged conventional understanding of when sophisticated metalworking began. If the dating was accurate, this precisely shaped iron object predated human civilization by tens of millions of years. The geometric form and apparent tool marks suggested manufacturing capabilities that shouldn't have existed in any known biological timeline. However, alternative explanations emerged over time. Some researchers proposed that the object was actually a piece of meteoritic iron that had been naturally shaped by geological processes. Others suggested it was mining equipment or ballast that had somehow become incorporated into the coal seam through subsidence or other geological activity. The most significant problem with investigating this case further is that the original object disappeared from the museum sometime in the 1950s. Without the artifact available for modern analysis, researchers can only work with historical descriptions, photographs, and second-hand accounts. Advanced testing techniques that might resolve questions about its composition, manufacturing method, and true age remain impossible to apply. This disappearance adds another layer of mystery to an already puzzling case. Whether the object was removed for further study, lost through mismanagement, or deliberately concealed, its absence ensures that one of the most intriguing out-of-place artifacts remains forever suspended between anomaly and explanation. Case 3. The Kingoody Hammer. The year was 1844, and workers quarrying stone near Kingoody, Scotland, were about to uncover something that would challenge the fundamental timeline of human technological development. Deep within Devonian sandstone, estimated to be 400 million years old, they reportedly discovered an iron hammer with a wooden handle embedded directly in the rock. Sir David Brewster, a respected physicist and inventor of the kaleidoscope, documented the discovery in detail. According to his account, the hammer was found in a quarry operated by Robert Hay, with the head firmly encased in sandstone while the handle protruded from the rock face. The workers had to break away the surrounding stone to extract the complete tool. The implications were staggering. Devonian period rocks formed long before complex life evolved on land. No mammals existed, no birds, no reptiles, and certainly no intelligent beings capable of manufacturing iron tools. The presence of a seemingly modern hammer in such ancient strata suggested either a massive error in geological dating or evidence of technological civilization existing hundreds of millions of years before accepted history. Brewster's scientific reputation lent credibility to the account, but skeptics raised immediate questions. Coal mining and quarrying operations in the 19th century were chaotic affairs, with frequent cave-ins, flooding, and mixing of materials from different geological layers. A more recent hammer could have fallen into crevices or been carried by underground water flows into older rock formations, creating a false impression of ancient origin. The geological context also presented problems. Devonian sandstone forms through gradual deposition over millions of years, making it difficult to explain how a complete iron tool could become embedded without showing signs of crushing, distortion, or chemical interaction with the surrounding sediment. The preservation described in historical accounts seemed inconsistent with the violent geological processes that would have been required. Unlike some other anomalous artifacts, the Kingoody hammer has not survived to the present day. No museum preserves it, no research institution holds it for study, and no modern analysis has been possible. The case rests entirely on historical documentation from the 1840s, creating a situation where one of the most potentially significant archaeological anomalies cannot be verified or investigated using contemporary scientific methods. This absence of physical evidence makes the Kingoody hammer simultaneously one of the most compelling and most frustrating cases in the catalog of out-of-place artifacts. The quality of the historical documentation suggests something genuinely unusual was discovered, but without the object itself, researchers can only speculate about what that something might have been. Case 4. The Dorchester Pot. In 1852, a massive explosion rocked Dorchester, Massachusetts, as workers blasted through solid rock during a construction project. When the dust settled and the debris was cleared, something extraordinary had been revealed. Embedded within the shattered remains of Puddingstone Rock, estimated to be 600 million years old, was an ornate metallic vessel that would become one of archaeology's most perplexing mysteries. The pot was unlike anything that should have existed in the Precambrian era. Measuring approximately 4.5 inches high with a 6-inch diameter, the vessel displayed sophisticated craftsmanship with decorative inlays and intricate patterns around its circumference. The metal appeared to be a silver-bearing zinc alloy, suggesting metallurgical knowledge that predated known civilization by hundreds of millions of years. Workers who witnessed the discovery reported that the vessel had been broken in two by the explosion, but the pieces fitted together perfectly. indicating that it had been complete when embedded in the rock. The decorative elements included floral designs and other ornamental patterns that implied artistic sophistication and cultural development at a time when Earth's most complex life forms were simple marine organisms. Scientific American documented the discovery, lending credibility to an account that challenged every established principle of archaeological chronology. If accurate, the Dorchester pot represented evidence of advanced civilization existing before multicellular life had evolved, placing intelligent beings with sophisticated technology in a timeline where they simply could not exist according to evolutionary science. Skeptical analysis focused on the circumstances of the discovery. 19th-century blasting operations were notoriously chaotic, often mixing materials from different sources and time periods. The explosion that revealed the pot was powerful enough to shatter solid rock, making it possible that a more recent decorative vessel had been inadvertently introduced to the blast site and subsequently misidentified as having come from the ancient stone. The geological context presented additional challenges to the anomalous interpretation. Pudding stone formations developed through complex processes involving the cementation of rounded pebbles and other materials over millions of years. For a complete metallic vessel to become embedded in such rock without showing signs of crushing, chemical alteration, or structural damage would require geological conditions that seem inconsistent with known formation processes. Most significantly, like many other anomalous artifacts from the 19th century, the Dorchester pot has vanished without trace. No museum catalog lists it, no research institution claims possession, and no modern scientific analysis has ever been conducted. The case survives only in historical accounts and newspaper reports from the 1850s, making verification impossible and leaving researchers to debate the significance of documentation that cannot be independently confirmed. The disappearance of the physical evidence creates a frustrating gap between historical claim and scientific investigation. Whether the vessel was lost through negligence, destroyed through mishandling, or deliberately concealed, its absence ensures that one of the most potentially revolutionary archaeological discoveries remains forever beyond the reach of modern scientific scrutiny. Case 5. The Coso Artifact. In 1961, 3 rock hunters searching for geodes in the Coso Mountains of California made a discovery that would spark decades of heated debate. Wallace Lane, Virginia Maxey, and Mike Mikesell were collecting specimens near the town of Olancha when they found what appeared to be an ordinary geode. Back at their shop, when they cut through the rock with a diamond saw, they revealed something that defied every principle of geological chronology. Inside the ancient stone was an object that looked unmistakably like a modern spark plug. The artifact featured a central metallic core surrounded by ceramic material, with what appeared to be a hexagonal metal casing. Most disturbing of all, the rock matrix surrounding this technological device was estimated by some researchers to be between 100,000 and 500,000 years old, placing advanced electrical components in a timeline when humans were barely using stone tools. X-ray analysis conducted by the discoverers reportedly revealed internal structures that matched contemporary spark plug designs almost perfectly. The images showed a central electrode, ceramic insulation, and metal threading that appeared identical to 20th-century automotive ignition systems. The precision of these internal components suggested manufacturing capabilities that shouldn't have existed until the Industrial Revolution. The geological context seemed to support an anomalous interpretation. The surrounding rock matrix displayed characteristics consistent with long-term formation processes, including mineral deposits and crystalline structures that typically require thousands of years to develop. The artifact appeared to be an integral part of the rock formation, rather than a recent intrusion or contamination. However, skeptical analysis revealed significant problems with the extraordinary claims. The Coso Mountains region had been actively mined during the early 20th century, and the area where the artifact was discovered contained numerous abandoned mining camps and equipment dumps. A 1920s-era Champion spark plug could easily have been lost or discarded in the area decades before its discovery. The rock formation itself presented additional challenges to the ancient origin theory. Rapid mineral encrustation can occur around metallic objects under specific environmental conditions, particularly in areas with high mineral content in groundwater. The desert climate and mineral-rich geology of the Coso Mountains could theoretically create rock-like concretions around relatively recent objects within decades rather than millennia. Most crucially, detailed examination by automotive historians revealed that the internal structure visible in X-rays matched Champion spark plugs manufactured in the 1920s with remarkable precision. The hexagonal metal casing, ceramic insulator design, and electrode configuration were all consistent with specific models produced during that era, making the identification of a misplaced automotive part far more likely than evidence of ancient technology. The original Coso artifact has not been available for independent scientific analysis since the 1960s. Its current whereabouts remain unknown, and the discoverers have been reluctant to submit it for modern testing that could definitively resolve questions about its age, composition, and manufacturing origin. Without access to the physical evidence, the case remains suspended between remarkable anomaly and misidentified modern debris. Case 6. The Baigong Pipes. Deep in the remote wilderness of China's Qinghai province, near the shores of Lake Tosun and the base of Mount Baigong, lies one of archaeology's most perplexing mysteries. In the late 1990s, Chinese researchers investigating unusual rock formations discovered an extensive network of iron pipes embedded in solid stone, running through mountains and extending into nearby lake waters in configurations that seem to defy both geological explanation and historical timeline. The pipe network consists of hundreds of individual conduits, ranging from tiny tubes barely wider than toothpicks to massive channels over a foot in diameter. Some pipes run horizontally through the mountain face, others descend vertically into the earth, and many extend directly into Lake Tosun, creating an underground infrastructure that appears deliberately engineered rather than naturally formed. What makes these pipes truly extraordinary is their apparent age. Initial analysis of the iron composition and surrounding rock matrix suggested the pipes could be 150,000 years old, placing their construction in a period when anatomically modern humans were just beginning to spread across Africa and had not yet developed metallurgy or sophisticated engineering. The implications of advanced pipeline construction at such an ancient date would revolutionize understanding of human technological development. The engineering precision of the pipe network adds to the mystery. The tubes maintain consistent diameters across long distances, follow logical routing patterns that suggest deliberate design, and connect different elevations in ways that would require sophisticated understanding of hydraulic principles. Some pipes appear to form complex junction systems, while others seem designed to transport fluids between the mountain interior and the lake system. Chemical analysis of the pipe material revealed unusual iron compositions that don't match typical modern industrial alloys. The metal contains trace elements and isotopic ratios that some researchers claim are inconsistent with contemporary manufacturing processes, supporting arguments for either ancient origin or unknown production methods. However, geological explanations for the Baigong pipes have emerged that challenge the technological interpretation. Some scientists propose that the formations are actually fossilized root systems from ancient trees, with iron mineralization creating tube-like structures through natural chemical processes over geological time periods. Tree roots can create complex branching networks that, when fossilized and mineralized, might resemble artificial pipeline systems, Alternative theories suggest the pipes could be products of unique geological processes involving iron-rich groundwater and specific mineral compositions in the local rock. Under certain conditions, flowing water can create tubular cavities in stone that subsequently fill with metallic deposits, producing structures that appear artificially manufactured but are actually natural formations. The remote location and restricted access to the site have limited independent investigation of the Baigong pipes. Most analysis has been conducted by Chinese research institutions, with limited international collaboration or peer review. This isolation makes verification of claims about age, composition, and origin difficult for the broader scientific community. Recent investigations have focused on alternative explanations that don't require advanced ancient technology. The discovery of organic materials within some pipe structures has supported the fossilized root theory, while detailed geological surveys have identified mineral processes that could account for the iron formations without invoking human engineering. Case 7. The Saqqara bird. In 1898, French archaeologist Auguste Mariette made a discovery in an Egyptian tomb near Saqqara that would later spark intense debate about ancient technological knowledge. Among the artifacts recovered from this 3rd century BCE burial site was a small wooden object that Egyptian antiquities officials initially catalogued as a bird figurine. For decades, it sat unremarkably in museum storage until aviation experts began to notice something extraordinary about its design. The object measured approximately 6 inches in wingspan and featured characteristics that seemed more consistent with aircraft design than natural bird anatomy. Its wings were straight rather than curved, positioned at the ideal angle for generating lift according to aerodynamic principles. The tail section included a distinctive vertical fin that provided directional stability, while the body proportions matched those of modern gliders with remarkable precision. Dr. Khalil Messiha, a physician and aviation enthusiast, first brought attention to the artifact's aerodynamic properties in the 1960s. His analysis revealed that the Saqqara bird incorporated design elements that wouldn't be understood by Western science until the development of powered flight in the 20th century. The wing aspect ratio, dihedral angle, and center of gravity all aligned with principles of stable flight that required sophisticated understanding of aerodynamics. Wind tunnel testing of scaled replicas demonstrated that the object could indeed achieve stable flight when equipped with appropriate control surfaces. The basic design showed remarkable efficiency in generating lift and maintaining directional control, suggesting that its creators possessed practical knowledge of aviation principles that conventional history claims were unknown to ancient civilizations. The artifact's context within Egyptian burial practices added another layer of mystery. Ancient Egyptian tomb goods typically held religious or symbolic significance related to the afterlife journey, but the Saqqara bird's function remained unclear under traditional interpretations. If it was intended as a bird representation, its anatomical inaccuracies were puzzling. If it served some other purpose, that function had been lost to historical record. Mainstream Egyptology offers alternative explanations that don't require advanced ancient aeronautical knowledge. Many scholars interpret the object as a stylized bird figurine with exaggerated features that happen to coincidentally align with aerodynamic principles. Egyptian art frequently employed symbolic rather than realistic representation, making anatomical accuracy less important than religious or cultural meaning. The weather vane theory provides another conventional explanation. Ancient civilizations used wind direction indicators for agricultural and maritime purposes, and a wooden object designed to align with air currents might naturally develop characteristics that promote stable orientation in wind. Such practical applications could account for the aerodynamic efficiency without implying knowledge of powered flight. Some researchers have noted that the Saqqara bird lacks several features essential for controlled flight, including movable control surfaces, power systems, or landing gear. These omissions suggest that while the object might achieve brief gliding flight, it wasn't designed as a functional aircraft, but rather served some other purpose that happened to require aerodynamic stability. The broader context of Egyptian technology also presents challenges to advanced aviation theories. Despite their remarkable achievements in engineering, mathematics, and construction, ancient Egyptians left no other evidence of aeronautical experimentation. No depictions of flying machines appear in their extensive artistic record. No texts describe aviation principles, and no other artifacts suggest interest in powered flight. Modern attempts to fly replicas of the Saqqara bird have produced mixed results. While some versions achieve stable gliding flight, others require modifications or additional components not present in the original artifact. These experimental variations highlight the difficulty of determining whether the object's aerodynamic properties were intentional design features or fortunate coincidences. The Saqqara bird remains in the collection of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where it continues to attract attention from both conventional archaeologists and alternative researchers. Its small size and simple construction make it easy to overlook among the museum's more spectacular treasures, yet it represents one of the most accessible mysteries in ancient technology, raising fundamental questions about the relationship between coincidence and design in archaeological interpretation. Case 8. The Quimbaya airplanes. In the mountainous regions of pre-Columbian Colombia, between 1000 BCE and 1000 CE, the Quimbaya civilization created thousands of small gold figurines depicting animals, humans, and geometric designs. Most of these artifacts fit comfortably within established understanding of indigenous art and religious symbolism. However, several dozen pieces from this collection have sparked intense debate among archaeologists, aviation experts, and alternative historians due to their uncanny resemblance to modern aircraft. These gold objects, measuring between 2 and 3 inches in length, display features that seem inconsistent with any known animal anatomy, but align perfectly with aerodynamic design principles. Unlike typical pre-Columbian animal figurines that emphasize organic curves and natural proportions, the Quimbaya artifacts feature straight wings positioned at precise angles, triangular tail sections with vertical stabilizers, and streamlined fuselages that minimize air resistance. The most striking examples include objects with delta wing configurations similar to modern fighter jets, swept-back wing designs that weren't developed in aviation until the 1940s, and vertical tail fins that serve no purpose in animal anatomy but are essential for aircraft stability. Some figurines even appear to have cockpit-like depressions and what could be interpreted as landing gear or engine nacelles. German aeronautical engineer Peter Belting conducted extensive analysis of several Quimbaya artifacts in the 1990s, creating scaled-up radio-controlled models based on their exact proportions and design elements. Remarkably, these replicas achieved stable powered flight, demonstrating flight characteristics that required sophisticated understanding of aerodynamic principles. The models flew with minimal modifications, suggesting the original designs incorporated functional aviation knowledge rather than purely decorative elements. The cultural context of these artifacts adds complexity to their interpretation. The Quimbaya people had no known exposure to flying creatures that matched these designs. While birds, bats, and flying insects existed in their environment, none possessed the straight wings, angular tail configurations, or geometric precision displayed in the gold figurines. If these objects represented animals from the Quimbaya worldview, they depicted creatures that didn't exist in their natural environment. Mainstream archaeology offers several alternative explanations that don't require ancient knowledge of aviation. Many researchers interpret the objects as stylized representations of flying fish, stingrays, or other aquatic animals whose wing-like fins could have inspired abstract artistic interpretation. The geometric precision might reflect cultural preferences for symmetry and mathematical proportion rather than aerodynamic optimization. The ritualistic context also supports conventional interpretation. Pre-Columbian gold work typically served religious or ceremonial purposes, representing spiritual beings, mythological creatures, or symbolic concepts rather than literal depictions of physical objects. The quimbaya figurines might represent spiritual entities associated with flight, wind, or celestial movement within their cosmological framework. However, the specific design details continue to challenge purely symbolic explanations. The wing aspect ratios, dihedral angles, and proportional relationships in these artifacts align with aviation engineering principles that weren't understood by Western science until the 20th century. Even if the objects were intended as abstract art, their creators somehow achieved configurations that modern aeronautical engineers recognize as highly efficient for powered flight. Some researchers have noted that several figurines appear to incorporate design elements that serve no artistic or symbolic purpose, but would be essential for aircraft function. These include swept-back wing configurations that reduce drag at high speeds, vertical stabilizers positioned for optimal directional control, and streamlined body shapes that minimize air resistance. Such features seem unlikely to emerge through purely artistic or religious inspiration. The metallurgical sophistication of the quimbaya artifacts also raises questions about their creators' technical capabilities. The gold work demonstrates advanced knowledge of alloy composition, casting techniques, and surface finishing that rivals contemporary jewelry production. This level of technological sophistication suggests that the quimbaya possessed practical engineering knowledge that might extend beyond conventional archaeological assumptions. Modern attempts to create similar figurines using traditional pre-Columbian techniques have proven challenging. The precision required for the wing angles, the symmetry of the stabilizing surfaces, and the mathematical relationships between different components require careful planning and technical skill that goes beyond simple artistic expression. Whether this precision reflects aesthetic preference or functional knowledge remains an open question. Case 9. The Dendera Light. Within the underground chambers of the Dendera temple complex in Egypt, carved into stone walls that have stood for over 2,000 years, are reliefs that continue to perplex researchers across multiple disciplines. These intricate carvings, created during the Ptolemaic period around 50 BCE, depict scenes that conventional Egyptology interprets as religious ceremonies and mythological narratives. However, electrical engineers and alternative researchers see something entirely different in these ancient stone images. The most controversial relief shows large bulb-shaped objects containing what appears to be internal filaments or serpentine forms. These bulbs connect to box-like structures through cable-like conduits, while human figures operate or attend to the apparatus. The overall composition bears striking resemblance to electrical lighting systems, complete with power sources, conducting wires, and illumination devices that seem more technological than spiritual. Engineer Alfred Bielik first brought attention to these reliefs in the 1990s, arguing that the depicted objects matched the basic components of electric lighting with remarkable accuracy. The bulb shapes showed the proper proportions for gas discharge tubes, the connecting elements resembled high-voltage cables, and the box-like structures appeared to function as power supplies or transformers. From an electrical engineering perspective, the carvings seem to illustrate a functioning lighting system. The technical details visible in the reliefs added credibility to the electrical interpretation. The bulb shapes contained what appeared to be electrodes at both ends, connected to external power sources through conducting pathways. The serpentine forms inside the bulbs resembled the plasma formations that occur in gas discharge lighting, while the overall configuration matched electrical principles that weren't officially discovered until the 18th and 19th centuries. Supporting this technological interpretation was the practical problem of illumination within Egyptian temples and tombs. The deep underground chambers of sites like Dendera receive no natural light, yet their walls contain intricate paintings and carvings that required precise artistic work. Traditional explanations suggest that ancient Egyptians used oil lamps, torches, or mirrors to reflect sunlight into these spaces. But such methods would have produced soot, smoke, and inconsistent lighting that seems inadequate for detailed artistic work. The absence of soot deposits on the ceilings and walls of many Egyptian underground chambers has puzzled archaeologists for decades. Oil lamps and torches would inevitably leave carbon residue, yet many tomb paintings remain pristine after thousands of years. Some form of clean, efficient lighting would explain both the quality of the artwork and the preservation of the painted surfaces. However, mainstream Egyptology firmly rejects electrical interpretations of the Dendera reliefs. Scholars identify the bulb-like objects as lotus flowers, common symbols in Egyptian religious art representing rebirth and creation. The serpentine forms inside are interpreted as snakes, particularly the primordial serpent associated with creation mythology. The connecting elements represent lotus stems or symbolic umbilical cords, rather than electrical cables. The religious context of the carvings supports conventional interpretation. Egyptian temple art consistently employed symbolic rather than literal representation, using familiar natural forms to convey complex theological concepts. The Dendera reliefs appear in chambers dedicated to creation mythology, where lotus flowers and serpents would have appropriate religious significance within established Egyptian cosmology. Archaeological evidence also challenges electrical theories. No ancient Egyptian sites have yielded artifacts that could function as electrical components, despite the preservation of countless tools, weapons, and ceremonial objects from this civilization. No texts describe electrical phenomena, no hieroglyphic symbols represent electrical concepts, and no other artistic depictions suggest familiarity with electrical technology. The technical requirements for electrical lighting in ancient Egypt present additional obstacles. Generating sufficient electrical current would require copper wire, magnets, and mechanical energy sources that leave archaeological traces. The chemical knowledge required for gas discharge lighting involves materials and processes that show no evidence in Egyptian technology. Even simple electrical cells require specific metals and electrolytes that aren't documented in ancient Egyptian chemistry. Modern attempts to recreate the supposed electrical devices based on the Dendera reliefs have produced mixed results. While some experimenters have created functioning electrical lighting systems inspired by the carvings, these devices require modern materials, precision manufacturing, and electrical knowledge that clearly wasn't available to ancient civilizations. The successful replicas demonstrate what might be possible with electrical technology, but don't prove that ancient Egyptians possessed such capabilities. Case 10. The Baghdad Battery. In 1936, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig was cataloging artifacts in the National Museum of Iraq when he encountered an object that would challenge fundamental assumptions about ancient technological capabilities. Among pottery fragments and bronze tools from Parthian sites near Baghdad was a small clay jar containing a copper cylinder wrapped around an iron rod. What Koenig recognized as potentially revolutionary was that this 2,000-year-old assemblage possessed all the basic components necessary to generate electrical current. The Baghdad battery, as it became known, consisted of a terracotta jar approximately 5 inches tall, containing a copper tube that encased an iron rod. The iron showed signs of corrosion from acidic substances, while the copper displayed the blue-green patina characteristic of electrochemical reactions. Most intriguingly, the components were assembled in a configuration that electrical engineers immediately recognized as a galvanic cell capable of producing voltage. Testing conducted by various researchers over the decades confirmed the device's electrical potential. When filled with acidic solutions like vinegar or citric acid, replicas of the Baghdad battery consistently generated between 1 and 2 volts of electrical current. This output, while modest by modern standards, represented sufficient power for electroplating operations, medical applications, or small-scale electrical experiments that could have been within ancient technological reach. The archaeological context supported the electrical interpretation in unexpected ways. Several similar devices were discovered at Parthian and Sasanian sites throughout the region, suggesting that the technology wasn't an isolated experiment, but part of a broader understanding of electrochemical principles. Some artifacts were found in association with thin metal objects that showed evidence of electroplating, indicating possible practical applications for the generated electricity. The implications of functional electrical devices in ancient Mesopotamia were staggering. If the Parthians possessed working knowledge of electrochemistry 2 millennia ago, it would represent technological capabilities that conventional history claims weren't developed until Alessandro Volta's work in the 18th century. Such advanced understanding could have enabled preservation techniques, medical treatments, or metallurgical processes that remain undocumented in historical sources. However, mainstream archaeology has consistently challenged the electrical interpretation of these artifacts. Many scholars argue that the objects were actually storage vessels for papyrus scrolls, with the metal components serving as preservation devices rather than electrical generators. The acidic corrosion on the iron could result from natural chemical processes over time, rather than deliberate electrolytic activity. The absence of supporting evidence also undermines electrical theories. Despite extensive archaeological investigation of Mesopotamian sites, no artifacts have been discovered that could function as electrical conductors, measuring devices, or applications for generated current. No cuneiform texts describe electrical phenomena, no artistic depictions show electrical devices, and no other aspects of Parthian technology suggest familiarity with electrochemical principles. The practical limitations of the Baghdad battery further challenge its interpretation as ancient technology. The electrical output is insufficient for most proposed applications, like electroplating, which would require sustained current over extended periods. The acidic solutions necessary for operation would quickly corrode the metal components, making the devices impractical for repeated use without constant maintenance and replacement. Alternative explanations for the object's construction continue to emerge from archaeological research. Some scholars propose they were ritual vessels related to religious practices, with the metal components serving symbolic rather than functional purposes. Others suggest they might have been medical devices designed to hold therapeutic substances, with the chemical reactions producing compounds used in ancient healing practices. The broader pattern of missing evidence creates the most significant challenge to electrical interpretations. If ancient Mesopotamians possessed working electrical technology, the archaeological record should contain extensive supporting materials, including tools, manufacturing facilities, and documentary evidence. The complete absence of such corroborating artifacts suggests that whatever function these devices served, it likely wasn't electrical generation. Modern attempts to recreate ancient electroplating using Baghdad battery replicas have achieved limited success under carefully controlled laboratory conditions. However, these experiments typically require modern materials, precise chemical formulations, and controlled environments that wouldn't have been available to ancient craftsmen. The gap between theoretical possibility and practical application remains substantial. The Baghdad battery exemplifies the challenge of interpreting archaeological anomalies. While the objects undeniably possess the physical components necessary for electrical generation, the absence of supporting evidence and practical limitations suggest alternative explanations may be more plausible. The case remains suspended between technological marvel and misunderstood artifact, representing the ongoing tension between extraordinary claims and archaeological evidence. These 10 artifacts represent more than isolated mysteries scattered across time and geography. They form a pattern of anomalous discoveries that challenge the linear progression of human technological development, suggesting that our ancestors may have possessed knowledge and capabilities far beyond conventional historical assumptions. Whether these objects represent advanced ancient civilizations, misinterpreted natural phenomena, or gaps in our understanding of the past, they force us to question everything we think we know about the timeline of human achievement. The truth behind these artifacts may be even stranger than the theories they inspire.